Welcome everyone, thank you for coming to the program today. We're going to get started and I'll turn off the lights in the back when I leave, but just wanted everyone to give Bob Ainsworth a warm welcome. He's a former CFO and controller, and then had a second chapter of his life as an author with lots of books and programs on mysteries, and today's is the Ponzi and Madoff scams, but he's been here before and given a program on the Gardner heist and other programs along that vein. So please join me in welcoming Bob Ainsworth.
Thanks. Hi, thanks y'all for coming. Although it's a rainy day, so like what else are you going to do? It's not like you can go play golf or anything. So normally I'm here and my wife is with me, but she just had a total knee a week ago at the Brigham's, and it's going pretty well, you know, for 10 days out, 8 days out, and it's a little painful the first few days, you know, and they've got her on a little bit, just a little bit oxycodone, but you know, you need that to be able to move. So you move your knee so you get all the benefit. If your knee, and I've had a friend do this, he didn't do all the exercises, his knee locked up, they had to go in and do it again. So you really need to like take the drugs, do this stuff. Anyway, so yeah, so I was an accountant in my life, and I always liked to read as a kid even. So I read, remember the old Perry Masons? You know, Raymond Burr, the TV show. So, you know, I was like 13. I was reading all of those. And actually, my dad got in trouble at the library because, you know, it's like, here's this 13-year-old kid reading this stuff. But Perry Mason's pretty mild. I mean, there's not like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's pretty clean. But, you know, they were like, oh my God. But anyway, so I read all those. And so I like that in history. You know, so what did I read last? I read I, Claudius. You know, the PBS thing. It's a little thick, you know, but you know you get through it, and it's well done. So when I retired, you know, I was thinking about what I would do in retirement, because you can only play so many rounds of golf, and I wanted to. Oh, I tried playing. Your shirt reminded me. I tried playing the drums for a bit, but I had no musical talent. I have sports talent, but I have no music talent. And I used to teach, but they wanted me to teach in the summer, and that was like, forget that. So I started thinking about, you know, what else I could do, and it sort of came to me actually from watching Raymond Burr on Ironside. Remember the show Ironside, where he was? So it was, you know, he was in the chair, but he had a crew with him. Right, he had the one guy who took care of him, and the other cops who they solve crimes. And I was just like, you know, an ensemble thing is easier, I think, for me to write, because you get, you know, multiple characters, you can do stuff. So anyway, so I started my last job. I was commuting into Boston on a train, and I took a notebook with me, and I had an idea, and I just started writing. And not too long, I filled it, and then I typed it up, and I had it like 140 or 150 double-spaced pages, which is about almost half a book. Wow. So when you could, you know, at least I could pump out volume. You know, it was bad writing, I know that, but that's okay. If you can't do volume, you can't get better, right? So you got to be able to pump. So, you know, I finished that one, and that actually turned out to be my second book, because a friend read it and he said, well, you know, you bring this character in, but we don't know anything about it. You need a book before that. So then I wrote the book on Nantucket. And then a friend said, well, I really like one of your characters called Uncle Louie, who's this mafia type guy, who's a real guy. And so then I wrote the Gardner book. And then I wanted a prequel, because my guy, his history is his grandparents lost all their money to Charles Ponzi. So I wanted to do a prequel book, so that's why I did the Ponzi book, which came from this. So, you know, I have ideas. Like right now, so a friend of mine said his father was the last unindicted mayor, is how he calls him. And it was just, but his dad was a cop. I won't tell you the town, but his dad was a cop, was mayor, very good, left office, and all the guys after him were indicted for embezzlement and graft and all that. And the town got taken over by the state, and they haven't had a mayor since. But when he said, you know, the last unindicted mayor, sounded to me like the best title to a book I'd ever heard. Yeah. Just like, because there's so many questions embedded in the title. So that's what I'm working on now. I finished one version, didn't like it. Just finished a second version, like it better, but not what I want. So I'm going to rewrite it a third time. But you know, I have no deadline and nobody gives me money, so I just do it till I'm happy with it. It's pretty simple. So this one came out of the Ponzi book because I did a bunch of research on that, and it just sort of strikes a chord with a lot of people around here, because Ponzi was in Boston. He was in 1920. He operated from January till early August of 1920, just 7 months, a little bit more. Took in somewhere between $10 and $15 million in those days money. Not today's day, in those days money. And he got it from about 30,000 people. He scammed. Now you have to remember, there were a couple of things that let him get away with that. One was, before the 1960s, if you printed something in a newspaper bad about somebody, like I'll pick on you. So I say, let's say she actually robbed a bank, and I write that she robs a bank. She can sue me, even though it's true. And those libel laws didn't change until the 1960s, when printing the truth became a defense. So none of the newspapers wanted to print anything about Ponzi, because they thought they'd be sued. Second thing was, the biggest crime going on at the time was what?
Bootlegging.
Nope. Sacco and Vanzetti. That happened at that time. So that's what everybody was covering. So there were a whole bunch of reasons that he got away with it, and he got away with a lot of money. So anyway, so this is a story sort of about fraud through the ages, and different examples of it, and some of them are sort of funny and some of them aren't. So what does that look like to you? Well, take a closer look.
How they not being painted?
What does it exactly look like?
It's a donkey being painted.
Exactly. So this is from the play and the movie A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, but with Zero Mostel. And it's about ancient Rome, and Zero Mostel plays a guy who scams everybody. And so this was one of the opening credits of somebody's painting a donkey to look like a zebra so they could charge people to come in. Right? Everybody knows that movie, right? The Sting, Paul Newman, Robert Redford, great movie, you know, and it's all about how do they pull off a scam to get back at somebody who had hurt their friend, actually killed their friend. Any of you recognize that movie?
I do. I've seen that a few times.
Very funny movie.
Yeah.
Michael Caine, Steve Martin, they play scammers, and the woman in the middle scams. They think they're taking money from her, but she's taking money from them. Very funny movie, and a good ending. I won't tell you what it is, but it's a very funny, original ending. So, you know, there's all sorts of stories about scams, and some of them are funny and some of them aren't. So what makes a con game or a scam? What are the attributes of that? What do people get told in order for them to give over their money? Better returns, right? You're going to, well, so yes, that's of who they are. Yes, so that's their personalities like. So the first is people are offered better returns. Yes.
They have to be desperate and hungry.
Not necessarily. Not actually. When I go through Bernie Madoff, they're the exact opposite. Exact opposite. But what are they like? They're very have good personalities. They can talk you into things. They think that you get to think that they agree with you. They just have a way about them that lets them get your money. And their personalities, the easiest way to think about it is they're financial psychopaths. They're not killer psychopaths, they're financial psychopaths. They have no empathy for you at all. All they want is your money. They don't care what it does to you after the fact. So they're psychopaths. Zero empathy.
Zero.
So what does that look like? And where would you find swampland?
Florida.
That is swampland in Florida. You could have bought that quite a few times over time. How about that one? You could have bought that too. You could have bought that at different times. And this one, just take a little closer look at it. No?
Oh, it's counterfeit.
Well, not exactly counterfeit.
It's people
Close.
making money.
It's yes. Well, it's printing money.
Printing money.
So this is the original black box, right? You put in a 20 and it prints you out a 20. Obviously, that can't happen. But this was a machine that was out there being sold that if you put in a 20, it would keep printing 20s for you. So that was the black box. So people have been trying to scam other people forever. Except in the beginning, it wasn't about cash because there was no cash, right? The world more lived on the barter system. So cash didn't really come into effect until like the 1700s-ish, right? Before then, it was all sort of barter. So back in those days, there was a thing called bottomry. So what somebody would do is they would borrow money to buy a boat. And then they would borrow money to fill it with grain, and they'd sail it from one end of the Mediterranean to the other. Along the way, they would send back word that they had been shipwrecked. The boat was destroyed. Everything in the boat was gone, except it wasn't. So it's really an insurance scam, and then they would take the boat, go someplace, sell the boat, sell the grain, and start over again. So it's really a big-time insurance scam, but it was sort of a scam at the time. Then there were these guys. Anybody know who the Praetorian Guard was?
Protecting the Roman Emperor?
Exactly. They were the secret service of their day. They were supposed to protect the Roman Emperor. Except one group decided they didn't like that anymore, so they killed him and then put the being emperor up for auction. So if you had enough money, you could have been the emperor of Rome. And so they were just stealing money by selling off something that wasn't really theirs, but they were the guard who was going to stop them. How about that one?
Oh, that's the cloak. This, I don't know the name.
What is it? Shroud of Turin.
Okay.
Okay? I hate to disappoint any of you. That is not an image of Jesus Christ. It was made in the mid-1300s. It's just charcoal and other stuff. It's somebody made it on linen. It is not from 33 AD or whenever it was that Christ died. So sorry. But that was being used by the church to raise money, right? You come in, see the Shroud of Turin, you touch it, whatever, you get a thread, you pay money, you go to heaven instead of hell. So this is the first stock fraud that I could find. And again, we've sort of jumped up to the 1700s. But this guy was a member of Parliament, British officer, and he said that he had an land in Central America, and the land was called Poye. And that if he owned this, and if you paid him, you could go to Poye and claim it and, live a new life in Central America. Well, there was only like a couple of things wrong with that. One was he didn't own it. Oh, they thought he was the chief. He said he was the chieftain of that country. He was the Kazis. And he put newspaper ads out, got investors. He got 5 or 6 boatloads of people to give him money to sail to Central America to claim their land in Poye. Of course, he didn't own anything. It was just jungle. All these poor people have given up their money. They land in Central America, and what do they get? Jungle. But he had all their money. So he was, but look at him. He looks official. He's got the epaulettes. Who wouldn't believe that this guy isn't the chieftain of Kazis? But he wasn't.
What happened to him?
I don't know. I'll have to look.
I mean, did people eventually get back to,
No, they didn't get back and they lost their money. I'll have to look what happened to him. That's a good question. So this guy is named George C. Parker, and he's the one who was selling the Brooklyn Bridge. Except he wasn't exactly selling the bridge. What he was selling was the right to put a toll booth on the bridge, and you could keep all the money. So who were his victims? Immigrants. people who didn't know anything about the U.S. People didn't know that it was like ridiculous to think that you could put a toll booth on the Brooklyn Bridge. But, you know, they'd put the toll booth up, the police would take it down, he would sell it again. And he just kept doing the same thing over and over. But he finally got caught and was sent to Sing Sing for life. So he got his just desserts. This guy is, so George Parker just sold the Brooklyn Bridge over and over again. This guy was very clever in that he had multiple scams going at different times. So his name was Victor Lusig, he was European. So he was selling the Eiffel Tower. What happened was the city of Paris and the country of France were tired of the upkeep on the Eiffel Tower. They said it was just too expensive. So there was talk of taking it down in the late 1800s. And if they take it all down, what happens? You get all that scrap metal. So he put out a thing that he had the right to the scrap metal when they took it down. He sets up a nice hotel, very fancy, gives people nice, food and wine, finally gets somebody to give him money. They give him a big check in hopes that they are going to get all that scrap metal and sell it. Of course, he never had the rights to it, and he just took their money. So then he went on to number 2, which was he would get on a boat in Europe and take the boat to the United States. Now remember, this is before telegraph and radio and all that. So on the way, he sells shares in a non-existent Broadway play, sort of like the play The Producers, right? Which is essentially the same thing. You're selling shares in something that doesn't exist. So he would sell shares, to people on the way. They would give him their money, and then he would run off the boat and take another one back to Europe, and just kept going back and forth, selling shares in non-existent plays. But very clever. So he had 2 going. He also was the one doing the money box, the black box. That was his scheme. So he was like a good entrepreneur. He had lots of different products out there that he could sell money from. He also, and I don't have it up there, but he also had like the 10 commandments on how to be a con man. So, but he had thought about it. So one was be very nice to people. Another was don't drink. Okay. A third one was completely agree with what anybody says to you. So whatever it is they say, yes, I feel that same way. Get people to talk about themselves, because they always want to do that. And then use what you've learned to feed it back to them. He always dressed very conservatively. He looked very good. He was not outlandish in any way. So he had all these rules about how to do it. And he was pretty clever at it, I thought. So now we're getting up to Charles Ponzi. Do any of you know how a Ponzi scheme works? What's the mechanics of it? Okay, Ponzi scheme is really simple. So I'm going to pick on you 4. So you 4 give me money, and I promise you 50% on your money in 45 days. You all give me money because you think you're going to be rich. I take your money. Now I go over here and I get these 8 people. I tell them 45 days, 50%. You give me your money. I take your money, I pay them off.
Right.
But once they've been paid off, they like this, so they give me their money back again, and they just keep rolling it over. But now I have to pay you people. So now I have to find a bigger group to take your money to pay these guys. So as long as you have an expanding volume of people, you're fine. The trouble comes when you can't find more suckers. Yeah. Right? So you go from 4 to 8 to 16, and you keep going up and up and up. So you're just giving money, promising great returns. Right? 50%, 45 days. Who would do that? Mm-hmm. Well, you shouldn't. Anyway, so here's sort of the mechanics of it. So take money from Group A, take money from Group B, use Group B money to pay A, find Group C, C pays B, and on and on and on. The mechanics are really easy. So there were Ponzi schemes before Ponzi, right? He came along in 1920, but he didn't invent this. He was taught this. So the first one that I could find, So it was called, before Ponzi, it was called robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
Why? It was called Peter to pay Paul because it had to come from Henry VIII. Remember his wives? He wanted to get rid of the first one, Catherine of Aragon, who was Catholic. He wanted to marry Anne Boleyn, who was a Protestant. The Pope would not give him a divorce. So what does he do? He breaks away from the Catholic Church, starts the Church of England. What does he do with the money that used to go to the Vatican? He keeps it. So instead of sending money to St. Peter's, he's now sending money to St. Paul's. Robbing Peter to pay Paul was robbing money from St. Peter's Church to pay for St. Paul's Church. So there's the Vatican. There's Henry. One wife out, two wife. Oh, by the way, I'm going to see the play 6 over at the Hanover Theater, which is all about this. It's pretty good. It's a musical. And there's St. Paul's. So robbing Peter to pay Paul is what it was called before Charles Ponzi. So this is the first one I could find. This woman was in Bavaria. She was an actress, and as she was getting older, she wasn't getting as many parts, and she needed money, so she set up a bank in a hotel room, which is not as crazy as it sounds, right? Money only really started in like the 1700s. There weren't banking laws. There weren't fraud laws. There was nothing. There was no, FDIC. Nothing existed. So that she wanted to start a bank in a hotel room was perfectly normal. So she did. And she promised 10% on your money in 2 months.
Oh my goodness.
Which is ridiculous. Right? Oh, by the way, the stocks, U.S. stock market, on average only makes 8%. Like that's the historical average. Bonds on average make 4%. Anything more than that in a year is a lie, and somebody's trying to take your money. So she was promising 10% in 2 months, which is blatantly ridiculous. But people believed her. And also remember, hardly anybody went to college. Most people didn't even go through high school. They finished grammar school, if they were lucky. So they weren't educated on this stuff at all. So she became the wealthiest woman in Bavaria. And the only thing the authorities could charge her with was bad bookkeeping. That was the only law she was breaking at the time because they didn't know about this stuff. And she got 3 years in jail. But she took the equivalent of 400 million euros from 32,000 people. Like I said, she was the richest woman in that country. No, I don't think so. So there was a case in New York with this guy. His name was Ferdinand Ward. And Ferdinand set up an investment company with somebody named Grant. And that Grant was the son of Ulysses Grant. And what they said was that so the son put in $200,000 and the president put in $100,000. What they said was because he was the son of the president, they could get great contracts from the government and make extraordinary profits, and they would share those profits with you. Total lie. But they did it, and they promised 2% every month, 24% a year. Blatantly impossible, but that's what they promised. People didn't know better. They gave them a bunch of money. They raised $9 million. They spent all the money on themselves. Finally, they got caught because they didn't have the money. They didn't have the money to give back to people. And the scheme collapses. They lose everything. And Ulysses Grant writes his memoirs because he's broke. And Ward said he was robbing Peter to pay Paul. That's what the scheme was called. So this is in New York. This is a guy named William Miller. I can't find a picture of him, but he was a bookkeeper. He promised 10% a week. So they called him 520% Miller because it's 10% times 52 weeks. 520% Miller. And he stole $1 million. He got caught, went to jail, had to give the money back and all that. But he got $1 million. This is in those days money again. This isn't current money. There was a Boston version of the same thing. I don't know if I'm going to get too close for your camera, but whatever. So there's a Boston version. This woman named Sarah Howe. So Sarah was a single woman, and she purported to be helping other single women buy houses. So She's opened up the Ladies Deposit Bank in 1879 in the South End. No advertising. It was all referrals. So the only reason I'll take your money is if you recommend her. Okay, so she kept it very quiet about that she was doing this. She promised 2% a month, 24%, again, impossible. And she said the money that she was helping, that was going out to people, came from Quakers in Pennsylvania who just wanted to help single women. Well, you can't check on this stuff. There's no internet. How do you know there's Quakers in Pennsylvania that are giving her money? You don't. You just rely on her. And she was a very well-dressed woman, carried herself well, and so she got jailed for cheating by false pretenses. So at least they'd gotten to the point of saying cheating was bad. So what does she do? She gets out of jail and does it again. Okay, then she gets caught and she goes to Chicago, does it a third time. She's at nothing if not persistent. Then she gets, there she leaves Boston, goes to Chicago, gets caught in Chicago. There she called it the Ladies Provident Aid Bank, same deal. Gets caught in Chicago. Where does she go? Back to Boston. Does it again. And gets caught and put in jail. So she was nothing if not persistent, not many imaginative, but did it a bunch of times and kept getting money and kept going to jail. So, what do you know now about a confidence game, a scam? What are some of the attributes? You have to have the personality, and what do you promise people? Quick, extraordinary money. Sometimes just directed to you. So, Sarah Howe, I'm just going to help single women buy their houses. She makes them feel special. She makes them feel included in a club. That's part of it. You're in this now. Okay? What makes a con artist? Clearly they don't care about the people at all. They'll say whatever they can to get your money. Anything to get your money. And what makes a victim? So this is a little harder, and I'm not saying in every case, because I know people get scammed and it just happens. But in many cases, people who get scammed by this stuff are the same kind of people as the scammers. They want to get rich quick. They don't think they should have to work for their money. They think they should have a better lifestyle. Not everybody. I'm not saying, I know there are tons of, the grandma scams and all those, and people are just tricked. But some of these things like this, these investment ones, the people who are scammed are very much like the people who are doing it. They have the same rationale in their head. So, we get up to 1920. Charles Ponzi. What was going on at the time? There was a book. There was a set of books and movies about a fictional scammer named J. Rufus Wallingford. So they were like 12-minute shorts. And this is the guy who was the actor, Burr McIntosh. And so there were 14 of these things running 20 minutes. Put out between 1915 and 1916. So it's sort of out there that there are scams, but they didn't call them scams. They called them get-rich-quick schemes, which almost make them seem like they're real. They're not, but it makes them seem that way. There were a lot of kids were working. People were not very educated. Hardly anybody went to college. Most people didn't get to high school. Wages were small. People were living on 33 cents an hour. Maybe $3,000 for a family. And so if you were making a lot of money, right, only 2% of the population made more than $10,000. So when I say that Ponzi got $10 million in those days money, that's a ton of money. So to the average person with Ponzi put in $300. But that was their life savings. That was every penny they had that wasn't going to their necessities. So that's the average that he took in. There were no financial regulations. CPAs had only started in the early 1900s. The Federal Reserve had been created, but it really had no power. There was no insurance on bank accounts like there is now. Right? No FDIC. That didn't come around until Franklin Roosevelt. So uneducated, poor, looking to get ahead, and no backup to help you. That's what the situation was like. And along comes Ponzi. Also in Boston, there were 7 newspapers at the time. There was a morning and an afternoon edition, but like I said, they were covering this. This was the story in 1920, right? Sacco and Vanzetti, supposed communists, robbed a bank, I think, and somebody died, and this was the big coverage. So nobody cared about Ponzi. And then came our buddy. So this picture makes him look kind of nice because it's in color, but when I turned it black and white, like on my cover, he looks a little more sinister, which he really was. So here's Charles Ponzi, that's his name, Carlo Pietro Giovanni Guglielmo di Paldo Ponzi. He was Italian, born in 1882. He was educated. He went through college and then came over to the United States in 1903. He left Italy with $200 or $300, and by the time he got here, he had about $1.50 because he'd lost it all gambling. So he gets here, and he has no money, and he needs a job. So where does he go? He goes to the North End with the other Italians, right? And he starts working in a restaurant. And he's cleaning dishes and pots and pans. Oh, here's his immigration. So here's Charles Ponzi. He came over on the Vancouver in 1903. So he goes to this restaurant, starts working. What does he do? He starts stealing. He steals tips. He steals out of the cash register. He steals food and sells it. Right? He's just an absolute crook. So he gets caught, and what does he do? He leaves Boston and he goes to Montreal. Okay? So here's his first theft. So he went to work for a banker named Luigi Zerosi, and he was promising Italian immigrants. So think about this. Here's an Italian promising Italian immigrants that in my bank I will give you more money than those Anglo-Saxon guys. Okay? But this is how they do it. It's called an affinity scam. You take money from people who are like you. Okay? Italian, Irish, Greek, Chinese, whatever. You go after people like you. Whether it's your ethnicity, your religion, anything. Could be a club you belong to. So anyway, so he goes to work for this guy. This guy is running a Ponzi scheme in his bank. He's giving out higher interest rates than the other banks. He gets caught. He leaves the country, leaves his family behind, and leaves Ponzi in charge of his own family. Ponzi doesn't have any money. So what does Ponzi do? He steals a blank check, writes it out to himself, and tries to cash it. He gets caught. He goes to jail. Now, and he's using a different name. He's Charles Ponzi. He's also Charles Bianchi. And that's what he looked like with his first arrest. Keep that picture in your head, because you're going to see some interesting things. So he goes to jail, gets out of jail. Right away, he tries to bring, he gets people who want to immigrate into the U.S., he charges them money that he'll take them across the border. He gets caught, has to go to jail, but this time it's federal prison in the U.S., not state prison in Canada. And he gets caught, and that's what he looks like now. Quite a bit different, right? He's very changeable. He's kind of a chameleon. So he's down in Georgia. He does his time. He gets out of jail. He roams the South for a while, and then he ends up in New York City, and he sees a job in Boston, which he left, 15 years ago, but nobody's going to know him. So he comes back to Boston. He goes to work in a Faneuil Hall marketplace for an import-export guy. He's making like $16 an hour. No, not even that. $16 a week. And he's a clerk. And he works for a guy named J.R. Poole. And then he meets the love of his life. This woman, Rose Ginecco. He courts her. They marry after a year. They live in Somerville. Here's their marriage certificate. So, interesting thing here. Ponzi's a clerk, but on their certificate he says he's a salesman. So he's giving himself a promotion. He's not a salesman. He's a clerk, but he's giving himself a promotion. So, here's the house. Here's the census in 1920, and now he's calling himself a foreign exchange expert. So he's gone from clerk to sales to foreign exchange expert with nothing behind it. This is just what he's saying he is. And there's the house they lived in Somerville. And that's what he looked like at that time. So you can see the change in what he looks like. Okay? So, her uncles ran a fruit stand just north of Faneuil Hall. They hire him to help turn it around because it's not doing well. But it goes bankrupt, and there's sort of the thought that he actually stole money from his uncles. But the place goes bankrupt, so he fails. But he doesn't want to go back to being a clerk, so he sets up a company, an import-export company. He has two problems with that. He has nothing to import and nothing to export. But other than that, he's running an import-export company. So to start this, he needs something to export. So he steals 5,000 pounds of cheese. 5,000 pounds, right? A wheel is like, what, 50 pounds? So he steals 100 wheels of cheese. He gets caught. Like, where are you going to hide it? In your pocket or something? So he gets caught, but he gets let loose because the warrant said his name was Ponzi, not Ponzi. So he gets let off because the warrant had his name misspelled. So he keeps the cheese, he sells it. So now he has some money. Okay? So he decides to start a magazine about how to be an import-export expert, even though he doesn't know anything about it because he's dealing with stolen stuff. That magazine fails. Oh, and here's where he was. So he was in the Niles building on School Street, and his publishing company was the Bostonian Advertising Company, and here's Charles Ponzi, Import-Export. That was from a telephone book at the time. But something happens. Somebody in Europe wants to buy a copy of his magazine, and they send him a letter with something called an international reply coupon, which was sort of like prepaid postage, right? So to facilitate mail between countries, you could take this stamp if you were in Italy, take the stamp in Spain and buy a stamp, and it would be the same price. So it's sort of just a way to move letters around. But the price of them varies slightly, but they only cost like 3 cents. So even if they vary 50%, you can't make a lot of money on it. But he's like, remember he said he was a trade expert. So he thinks, I can make money on the different value of these stamps, which is nonsense, but he thinks he can. And so he, so these are what the stamps look like. So each country put out their own. Okay? And they're very nice looking. Actually, I have an example I can show you. So he says, you give me money. I'm going to buy stamps in one country. Then I'm going to sell them in another country for more money, and I'll give you the profits from the different value of the stamp. Okay. Except, there's a couple of problems with that. Oh, and he says he'll give you 50% in 45 days. That was my example that I gave before. So he says he'll go out and buy millions and millions of these stamps. And that's where the profits will go. The reality was there were only 100,000 of those stamps in the world, not millions. Okay? So there's no end. How's he going to get them from all the different countries? It's just nonsense that he could do this. Okay? The other thing is the stamps could only be traded for stamps. You couldn't trade a stamp for cash, sort of like Bitcoin, right? It's hard to go from, I know you can, but it's hard to go from Bitcoin to cash. You couldn't get cash out of this thing. So how is he paying out profits if he can't get cash from selling stamps? He can't. The whole thing is made up. Okay? So he was robbing Peter to pay Paul. Just the example I gave with you guys. So he starts the fall of 1919. He goes to rich people to try and use this, but they're too smart. They're actually educated, and they know he's like full of bull, so they won't give him money. So what does he do? He goes after fellow Italians, right? Immigrants, people who don't know any better. January 6th, he makes his first sale. He turns that guy into a salesman. February 15th, he pays off his first investors. So he actually got in enough from the B people to pay the A people. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, he stole his wife's jewelry and pawned it without telling her. But he took some of the money and got the money out of hock. Nice guy. So here's how much money was taken in by him month by month. So January, 18 people, not quite 2,000. February, 17 people, a little more money, right? Remember I said it was an average of 300 bucks. March, now word is starting to spread. He's up to 110 people, 25, this is all those days' money. Oh, no, wait. April, he's up to 500 people, he's taking in 140,000. May, 1,500 people, almost 500,000. Oh no, just wait. June, almost 8,000 people, 2.5 million. Will you see July? 20,000 people, $6.5 million. Geometric growth, word spread. So in total, about 30,000 people and somewhere around $10 million. Somewhere between 10 and 15. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how much that is in today's money?
I think you do it.
I don't
I know that. I think it's something like 10 times.
Times 10?
I think it's something more.
Not even that. 10 times that for 10 times you only have to go back to the 70s.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I'll take her word for it. So call it 100 times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or something. So maybe 50, maybe 20 or 30 times.
She sounds like she knows. I'll go by her. So call it 30 times that. So 30 times 10. A lot of money. Okay. And he took some more in August, but that's when he got caught. And so here's where he operated out of. So this is Old City Hall. This is School Street. Up on top of School Street is the Parker House. And he was on the second floor here. And that's what it is looks like now. There's a Starbucks below it. And he was on this second floor. And you can see like the fence is the same and all that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So, but he finally did get caught. That's what he looked like, at the height of his fame. Here he is with his wife, and that's his mother. He brought her over from Italy. They had a really nice house, which I'll show you in a second. So here's what his office looked like, and it looked like, a bank. It had, the things, the bars. It had, nice counter. It had very educated people. Here's a cop. He had politicians, lawyers, bankers. People were streaming in to give him money. So here's the house he had. So this is on Slocum Road in Lexington. He bought it for $29,000 with some of his stamps, which were worth nothing. So I went to the Lexington Green reenactment, the thing, and I drove past it. And it's a really nice house. It sold for, I think, $1.4 million recently. But it's a very nice looking house. Here's the car that he owned, right? So, sorry. Let me go back. Yeah. So it's a really nice looking Hudson, snappy car. Yeah, very good. But then he got caught. Oh, he was very short, right? So he was like 5'2".
Oh my goodness.
And here's the interesting thing. So he's dressed very, very well. Here he is at his office. But look at the background. It's just like a plain office. There's a telephone. There's, it's not like as fancy as you would think. But he dressed really, really well. So he had so much money, he started buying things. He bought a macaroni company, a construction company. He bought his prior employer, Poole, right? The guy who gave him his first job, he bought him. He bought a sardine company, a meatpacking company. He bought 4 banks. So when he ran out of cash, he went to his bank. And he bought tenements and gave out mortgages, and he had so much money. He sent a couple of million to his family in Italy. Then he finally gets busted, pleads guilty very quickly, and he's in jail till 1924. Then he gets out and he skips bail because those were federal charges. They still wanted him for the state, and so he goes to Florida, and this is what he looks like. And his name is now Charles Borelli. And guess what he's doing in Florida? No. What do you do in Florida? You sell swampland. He went down to Florida and sold swampland down there, gets convicted, skips again, gets arrested, and that's what he's looked like when he's arrested this time. So remember when I said he was a chameleon? Think of all those different looks he had.
Oh my God.
So here he is. So this is his wife. She did not divorce him till he was deported. Here he is getting deported. He went to Brazil. And, this is his indictment. So I just think it's interesting. So he was charged with defrauding diverse persons. That's the best they could do. Okay? And there's this indictment, October. And he died in Rio de Janeiro, penniless. He barely had enough money for his own grave. So, and that's what he looked like at the end. So, remember I said that people who do this have no empathy at all? Yeah. Look at the words of how he described what he did. Without malice aforethought, I have given them the best show that ever was staged in their territory since the landing of the Pilgrims. It was worth $15 million to watch me put it over on them. That's what they think. They don't care. He was putting on a show. Yeah. Right? They have no empathy at all. But there'll be other people like this. So how did he get away with it for so long? Like I said, where was the post office? Where was the government? Where were the newspapers? Well, the post office sent him a lot of nasty notes saying, Charles, don't do this. But they didn't put them in the newspaper. Yeah. There was no radio. There was no TV. They couldn't broadcast it. So nobody knew that he was in trouble with the post office, so he just blew them off. So these are all the nasty notes that he got sent. Just tons and tons. These countries stopped issuing those stamps, and the post office said you couldn't redeem anything more than 50 cents. So people tried to control it, but it didn't stop anything. Where was the government? So this guy was in charge of loans for the Commonwealth, and his opinion was if Charles was stupid enough to pay 50% in 45 days, that was his problem. He didn't realize the other side of it. He just looked at it as a loan. So he didn't do anything. So he was no good. So on the newspapers, like I said, you could get sued for printing the truth. So nobody printed anything. So this is the first article about Ponzi on June 9th, 1920, the Boston Traveler, and it's called, remember I said, Get Rich Quick Schemes, pops out of postal guide, profit in 45 days. They were lauding him. They were saying this is a great thing, you should invest in it. And that's what this all says. Then here's the next article. Remember, he only operated till like August 10th. So this is July 24th is the second article. You can double your money. Ponzi has thousands of investors. You can't have a loss. Right? All of this, police officials invest. So, and here's July 27th, another good article. Ponzi tells how he does it. So the newspapers were piling on. Give him your money. Bad idea. So who caught him? So you're going to recognize this guy in a minute, but not yet. So his name is Clarence Walker Barron. Came from Boston, went to Boston Latin. He published the Boston News Bureau, which was a local newspaper about financial news. But he also published a little thing called, he owned the Wall Street Journal. And he also is Barron's. So Barron's newspaper is him. He owned all of those. He's the one who caught him. Here's his office. They were at Kilby Street, which is down near Post Office Square. So in order to get around, I'm sorry it's so muddy, but that's the only way I could get it. The way the newspapers got around it was that they interviewed him so he'd be sued, and they just ran an article saying, Barron said this. So here it is. He questions Ponzi, questions his coupons system. He said the stamps will only work in a small way. And why is Ponzi doing this to help you? If he could make that much money, he'd do it for himself. So he's the one who first came out and said this thing is nonsense. And of course, Ponzi sued him for $1 million. But in his own paper, he put out an article that basically said everything Ponzi's doing is wrong. So he went out there and he said, he's trying to warn everybody. And he says he's a young man not long since an expert shipping clerk. Sort of like Churchill calling Adolf Hitler that paper hanger. The only government official who went after Ponzi was this guy. He was the U.S. attorney. So after Barron's article came out, then he went after him. He appointed this guy as the auditor at the end of July. And it took him about 10 days to figure out the whole thing was a fraud. August 12th, Ponzi says, yep, you caught me. And then he pleads guilty in November. Here's the most important thing that Barron said. Every get-rich-quick scheme, meaning any investment, must have its basis in new claims of discovery or a new invention, because that's the only place you get new wealth. Right? Somebody invents Microsoft. Somebody invents the telephone. That's where you get wealth, not from investing in stamps. You don't make money that way. If it's that way, it's probably not true. But before Ponzi, somebody was running a bigger Ponzi scheme, and it was this guy, Leo Koretz. So the only thing was, he stole $30 million. He was running a scam on land in Central America that had oil, right? Instead of that British guy saying land, this is land with oil. And then some people finally went down there and there were no oil wells. So he gets caught. But he didn't get caught until 1923. So if he'd been caught earlier, we would call it a Koretz scheme. But Ponzi got caught first, so we call it a Ponzi scheme. But this guy was running this thing from 1905. He ran almost a 20-year Ponzi scheme. Here's what he says. Yes, I knew the bubble would burst, but I was indifferent to where or how the thing would stand. I was so disgusted with those seeming friends who wanted to get something for nothing. It's the same as Ponzi. Does not care. So there have been other more recent scams. So anybody recognize him? Who's that? That's Bernie.
Oh my gosh.
Okay? So Bernie, he's passed away. So he started scamming people back in 1960. His father-in-law recommended him as an investor to some clients. He lost all their money, but his father-in-law gave him money to pay them back. But he was not very good at investing. So he had fake profits. But he had a legitimate business. He had an investment business, and he had a business that actually conducted trades. And that business he was really good at. He's the one who started the NASDAQ, right? You have the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. He invented the NASDAQ. He invented electronic trading. He invented, giving people their information. He was testifying in front of Congress. The SEC loved him. He was a deal, right? People, worshipped him. But there were tons of warnings that he was a crook. So these two guys with Ponzi in the early 80s and 90s raised almost $500 million from investors running a Ponzi scheme. And they got caught, but all the SEC did was shut them down and make them return their money. They could have gone to jail, just like Ponzi could have gone to jail for the letter being spelled wrong. They should have gone to jail, but he didn't that time. Okay? So, Madoff's scheme was a little bit different. What he did was, he said, okay, what's your name?
Elaine.
Elaine, I want you to make 15% this month. So I'm going to send you a paper statement with trades that give you 15%. What's your name?
Helen.
I want Helen to make 20% the next month. So I do a paper statement that gives her 20%. It's like picking the winner in a race after the race is over. And the only way people got information was on a piece of paper. They could not look it up. Like right now, if you have Fidelity money or whoever, you can go online and see how much money you have. The only way you got information was the paper he sent you. So he gave the return based on whatever he wanted. And they were total fake trades. He never invested a penny. Everything was fake. He kept all the money people gave him. Okay? So he had a bunch of workers on one floor, all high school degrees, uneducated, overpaid, who did exactly what he said. So he sort of had minions who were just going along with the thing. Okay? Then he had his legitimate business on the next floor run by his sons, and that actually traded shares for people. So what he said was, based on the other floor, he got information that let him make money with your investment. Total bull, but that's what his rationale was. Okay? Uneducated people. Oh, he had people who would write him $100 million checks if he needed cash. So he had some backers. Yeah. and this is the funniest part, being an ex-CPA. So you'd think with somebody who's got billions of dollars coming in, he'd have a big CPA firm. His CPA firm was a one-man guy in a strip mall next to a pizza shop. That's who his accountant was, auditing all of those dollars. But nobody looked into it. They didn't check. Oh yeah, he was great. So he had rules. One is you could never tell people that you invested with him. 2, he only took referral business. Remember Sarah Howe? Only take it referral money. And he made people feel like he was doing them a favor. All right, I don't want your money, but force me, I'll take it. Right? Like he was doing you a favor. Total nonsense. They made the same return. They had positive returns for 30 years. Only 1 quarter did they lose money. The stock market loses money every day. He never lost money for 30 years except once. Okay? If you wanted your money, he paid you quick, so you thought everything was real. And he said he had that other business. And I told you about that part. So, where did he get all of his money from? Right? Because you got to keep expanding. Remember my example? He went to the Pine Brook Country Club in Weston, primarily a Jewish club. He went after people with the same religion. When he wasn't in Massachusetts, he was in Palm Beach at that country club, also primarily Jewish, also going after people who were like him. Hillcrest Golf Club in Minneapolis, same thing. And Oak Ridge Club in Hopkins, Minnesota. All primarily Jewish clubs, all places where he got money from. He also got money from something called feeder funds. So a feeder fund is, I'm a smart guy, all of you people give me your money and I'll invest it for you. So I'm the feeder fund, you give me the money, I invest your money, I give it to Madoff. Okay, so I'm a feeder fund. He had a couple of feeder funds. Those are all the feeder funds around the world sending him money.
Oh my God.
From every wealthy capital in the world. So my example of I'm the feeder fund with you guys, there were hundreds of feeder funds. Taking money from royalty, from aristocrats, from extremely wealthy people, and funneling it all to Bernie.
Where are they from?
Huh? Oh, they're from all over. Every country, every wealthy city in the world you can think of. No, that's a pretty good list. I didn't make it up, I found it somewhere. But he finally got busted when the market collapsed in 2008 because he didn't have enough cash to pay everybody and people wanted their cash. And so he finally confessed to his 2 sons. They went to the FBI, they turned him in and he got arrested. If the market hadn't collapsed, he'd have been going until he died. He and his wife tried to commit suicide, did not. So he stole $20 billion from 40,000 people in 125 countries. That's real money that he stole. He was sentenced to 150 years in jail and died after serving 12 years. These are, yes ma'am.
How come his sons turned him in?
Because they were horrified by what a horrific person their father was.
Well, they obviously didn't like him at all. So.
Well, he kept them separate from the bad stuff, right? They ran the stock business. They had no idea what he was doing, and he did the bad business. So the kids knew nothing. His wife knew nothing. He kept it from everybody.
What they turned him in.
No, she didn't know anything. Pardon?
You'd think something with the kids may have loved him and they wouldn't turn him in. Or maybe they didn't.
They were hard. Well. So wait till you hear. So these are some of his victims. Kevin Bacon and Sarah Sedgwick, Steven Spielberg, Elie Wiesel, right? Larry King, Fred Wilpon. He owned the New York Mets. He almost lost the team because he lost so much money. Carl Shapiro owned gave tons of money to the Museum of Fine Arts, Brandeis, Beth Israel. Across from the Brigham, where my wife had her surgery, is the Carl and Ruth Shapiro building for something. And that was money he gave to them before, before he lost it. The Goldbergs from Stop and Shop. Zsa Zsa Gabor lost a bunch. They eventually got most of the money back. So what the idea was, if you had made an ungodly amount of money for 30 years. You should have been smart enough to know this was a scam. So it's called a clawback. So they got almost all of the money back from very wealthy people to pay to the other people who were further down the food chain. So this guy clawed back $14 billion of that 20, and they're still getting more and more. This was the guy who, so he had to give up $7.2 billion back. That's how much he'd made in fake money. He had to give all that back. The Shapiros, they had to give back $700 million. This investment group give back $1 billion. This investment group almost $1 billion. This investment group $700 million. So they're taking money back from people who should have known better. Unfortunately, there were many suicides because of what he did. One of his sons killed himself, Mark. His sister and her husband, Madoff's sister and her husband, killed themselves. This guy lost $7 billion that he'd invested of other people's money, and he lost $50 million of his own. He killed himself. This guy was from a very long history, aristocratic family, and he lost $1.5 billion. And he closed himself in his office, got 2 trash cans, slit each wrist, and bled into the trash cans. And that's how he killed himself. Because he was so horrified of all the damage he'd done to people who trusted him, because he was one of the feeder funds. He was one of the feeder funds giving money to Madoff. And he was so horrified by that he didn't catch it that he killed himself. So, where was the Securities and Exchange Commission? Well, they loved Bernie because he invented the NASDAQ. They did audit him, but they always sent in rookies who didn't know anything. In 2008, just before he was caught, somebody sent the SEC chairman a letter saying Bernie's keeping 2 sets of books. And you know what he did with the letter? He put it in a drawer. He didn't do a thing about it, even though he'd been warned. And there was this guy who's pretty famous. He's a Boston securities analyst. He worked for a competitor of Madoff. And his boss came to him and said, "Why is Madoff making all this money and we're not? Figure it out." It took this guy 20 minutes to figure out Madoff was running a scam. It took him the afternoon to document it. So in 4 hours, he could prove Madoff was running a scam. And he told the government this 4 times, and they ignored him every time. 00, 01, 05, and 07. Every time, they ignored him. Here's what Madoff thought about himself. There's nothing for me to change from. It's not like I consider myself a bad person. I made a horrible mistake and I'm sorry. A mistake? 30,000 people, untold suicides, and you made a mistake and you don't have anything to change from? It's the same self-thought that all of them have. It's not them, it's you. There's nothing wrong with me, I'm just taking your money. So there have been other scams that you'll recognize, so that maybe not this one. So this guy was a Texas real estate guy, and he set up a bank with above average rates of return in Antigua, right in the Caribbean. He says, what am I going to do? I'm giving you higher rates of return. The whole thing was nonsense. He sponsored tons of sporting events. He stole $8 billion. They've only found 1. They don't know where the other $7 billion went. 110 years in jail. This guy, he was the founder of the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, right? Those singing groups, okay? And he said he owned an airline called Transcontinental Airline, and he leased jets to music companies, music groups. So here's the jet that he said he owned, that he rented to people, except there was no jet. There's a hand holding the tail. That's why there's no tail in the picture. It's somebody holding a model airplane in front of a picture of an airport saying, this is my airline. That's the airplane. Somebody's got their hand on the tail and they had to crop that out. So he stole money from the music groups. He never owned an airline. His CPA firm was Cohen and Siegel, after Mickey Cohen and Bugsy Siegel, right? The mobsters. at least he was funny. 25 years in jail, and he died after 8. Have you recognize her? Who's she?
Elizabeth Holmes.
The blood lady, right? One drop of blood, I can figure out everything that's wrong with you. So she raised $700 million on that. And it wasn't true, so 11 years in jail. Crypto guy, okay? He started a currency exchange, stole $10 billion from people, and he's doing 25 years in jail. This woman said she was a Harvard MBA and law school grad, and that she had made so much money that she'll manage your money for free. She wouldn't even charge you a fee. Of course, that's nonsense. She gets their money and stole $6 million. But she mostly liked athletes. Anybody recognize him?
No.
Basketball player, played for the Detroit Pistons against the Celtics. Dennis Rodman. Oh, by the way, these were all her other names. King, Williams, Simpson, Rivers, and Berard. And these are all the athletes. Ricky Williams, Travis Best, Rashad McCants, all famous athletes that she was scamming money from. This woman operated in Jamaica, and she was an investment manager, and she stole money to pay for her dad's funeral, realized how easy it was and kept doing it. And she stole money from Usain Bolt, right? She got almost all of his money, $13 million, that he had earned over his career. This one's interesting because it's so different from the others. So I was giving this presentation and a guy was sitting right there, and afterwards he said, I was scammed. And I was just like, well, would you mind telling me the story? He was in a coffee group, right? They'd meet every week for coffee at a local place. Coffee, pastry, whatever. And this guy, James Dodge, said he was a retired pharmaceutical salesman, but on the side he invested money. And he always made more than the stock market. So they kept meeting for time and time. He said he was making 6% a month, which is impossible. But he never asked the other people in the club for money. He just said, no, I won't take your money. So finally the guy who was in the audience forced him to take his money. And he defrauded 52 people out of $1.7 million. This is what his son calls him, a restless, unfulfilled, manipulative opportunist. That's what his son said about his dad. And the poor guy, so he ran it from 04 to 10, 5-year sentence, had to pay money back. So the poor guy in my audience had lost most of his life savings, and he's getting $30 a month from his Social Security payment as restitution, but he'll never get back the money that he lost. But I appreciated him sharing that, because that's a very common thing. This is an old guy, nice guy, talking to people saying, you know, I have this way of making money. No, I don't want your money. All right, I'll take it. And then he's caught. So it's not always the big Bernie Madoff things. There can be little ones just like this. This guy was on the FM radio as a financial advisor on the North Shore of Boston. And he was like Madoff. Everything was on paper. He never sent out confirmations. He was running a Ponzi scheme the whole time. His wife didn't even know about it. And he stole $33 million from 140 people, mostly Masons. So instead of ethnicity, it was a Mason club. Right? And he did 11 years in jail. This guy prepared tax returns, sold insurance, all that kind of stuff. He said he could invest money in what he called his 8% fund that guaranteed an 8% return. And then he was going to take your money and buy rental properties and then take the money from the rental properties and pay you. All nonsense. He never bought anything. All his transactions statements were fake. Didn't earn anything. And he ran the Ponzi scheme from the 80s to 2011. It's a long time. Defrauded 1,000 people, $95 million. People are going to get 5 cents back for every dollar. Yep. And he's under indictment right now. So here's some other celebrity victims. Sting, right? The recording artist. His accountant stole $9 million from him. Dane Cook, the comedian. His brother-in-law stole 12. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he signed a power of attorney to somebody, and that guy invested in Arabian horses and oil wells. Billy Joel. Billy Joel was married to Christy Brinkley. They're flying on an airplane. They're flying coach. His money manager is flying in first class. Christy turns to Billy and said, "What the hell is going on? Why is he up there and we're back here?" So he finally had that guy audit. Somebody had audited the books, and it was his brother-in-law who stole $30 million from him. So you wonder why he keeps doing all the concerts? He lost $30 million bucks. George Harrison lost money to his money manager, right? One of the Beatles. Stan Lee of comic book fame. He was sort of manipulated and dragged to shows, and somebody was stealing all his money. Uma Thurman, Wesley Snipes, Annie Leibovitz, and others were ripped off by a guy named Kenneth Starr. And this guy stole money from Leonardo DiCaprio, Ben Affleck, and Matt Damon. Okay? So now you know the answers to these questions. What makes them? They're cheaters. They have an ego. They say they're smarter than you. They gain your trust, and they don't care about you at all. And they don't want to work. What makes a victim many times, right? Madoff's victims, this is what they were like. Some people are just too trusting. They get scammed. Some people think they're smarter than the scammer, and they'll get out before they get caught, which isn't true. They don't want to work, and they believe they have money due to them. So what's the moral of these stories? If it's too good to be true, it isn't true. Stocks earn 8%, bonds earn 4%. Anything more than that, somebody's lying to you. I'm just telling you, they are lying through their teeth. Only invest with registered, reputable people. Call the Secretary of State, call the Attorney General. Find out that they're really who they are, right? And not a one-man CPA firm next to a pizza joint. Don't sign your power of attorney lightly. I know people have to do it, but be really careful. You give a power of attorney, they control your money. Just a warning. Don't trust family members or friends. Go to professionals. They know what they're doing. They have backup. They're registered. They're regulated. Don't trust family and friends. I'm just saying. Nothing is guaranteed. If somebody says you're going to earn money all the time, absolute lie. And watch for anything that says everybody's buying it, send money now, or free lunch to get you to invest in blah, blah, blah. Run away as far as you can. They go after your people who are the same religion, ethnicity, social group. Ponzi wrote his own book over here, The Rise of Mr. Ponzi, which is a complete lie. If you want to learn about Bernie Madoff, there's a great thing on Netflix and some movies. That guy, a good book by Harry Markopolos about how he uncovered Madoff. And I know it's getting late, so these are my books. They're over there if you want to buy one. They're $13. If not,
Are these true or are these made up stories?
My stories, they're all fiction. Oh, but wait. This is my marketing pitch.
Is this a scam?
No. But actually, well, it sort of is because they're $13, not as much as there. So you buy them for $13, but then I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I make a lot of joke about this, but watch it. People are out there always trying to get your money, especially from elderly, and I count myself in there. I'm 72. People are after your money. So have a nice day. If you want to book, great. If not, thanks for coming.